From the 1011 Now streaming studio in Lincoln, Nebraska, this is the REPORT Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store.
Hi, everyone. Bill Rentschler in the 1011 Now streaming studio alongside Sports Director Kevin Sjuts for another edition of the REPORT Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Kevin, there's a ton of stuff to talk about. It's been a little bit of a busy week. Both Husker athletics, high school athletics, ton of stuff going on.
We could talk for a long time, but for the sake of the busy week and all the other things we have coming up, because we're recording this at about 2 o'clock on Thursday, and we're leading into a very busy Thursday night, and there's a few things happening on Friday as well.
Just a couple things. We could start with football, but I feel like we'd be remiss. I want to start with volleyball.
Okay, let's do it.
Because that match last night, you know, first couple games of the season, they had looked good, but then they went down to Dallas. They get swept by what we're finding out is a really good SMU team. Stanford comes in ranked second, undefeated. They had just swept Texas at home, and I feel like John Cook and his squad ran through that Stanford team like they were a buzzsaw.
They did. That was very impressive, and that looked like a team that could win a national championship. I think everybody thought Nebraska could win a national championship at the start of this year, but your outlook on the season kind of changes in the non-con a little bit with the loss to SMU and even not looking super crisp in some of the other matches. But last night, if that's the team that's on the court, there's a trophy in their hand at the end of the season. That was very impressive. Not only beating number 2 Stanford, as you mentioned, Bill, who came to Lincoln with a perfect 7-0 record, they swept them. And set 3 was 25-14.
I say it was a sweep, but it wasn't like 25-23, 26-24. I mean, it was 25-17. Second set was the closest, 25-22. And then, like you mentioned, 25-14. Everything looked good. They were serving good. They were blocking good. It all looked good.
And you would think with 2 perennial powers and with, you know, the combined rosters, there are 8 All-Americans between those two teams on the current roster right now, that it would be a pretty nip-and-tuck game. And it's going to come – each set is going to come down to a few critical moments late. Nebraska had control in set 1. They played with the lead, I believe, the entire first set, never from behind. And then set 2, they gave up 8 consecutive points, but it happened early. And then the Huskers chipped away. Then there were a couple of key points about midway through the set that the momentum completely swung. The Devaney Center went crazy, and the environment was pretty electric last night. And once Nebraska finally had the lead, you just got the sense that they had that set 1 and then also the match. They broke Stanford, and not many teams will ever break Stanford.
No. Huskers end up hitting 263 for the match. They held Stanford to a 100 hitting percentage. And Andy Jackson just seems like she's playing on a whole other level this year. She's just, when she jumps, I think we talked about it last week, she's got her armpits over the net.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. We showed some of those images on the news last week, and I remember Madison Pitch, one of the co-anchors of the evening newscasts, during a commercial break, she was like, oh, my goodness. Like, I knew, but I didn't know. And, you know, when you see the images, it's just like, this is freakish. Everybody loves Andy Jackson on the slide play in the quick set, and, man, she can just pound the ball and have it land in front of the 10-foot line, which is pretty elite. But I think one of the biggest values she's bringing to the team right now, and the players talked about this after the Stanford win last night, is their block touches. It is a way to really frustrate opposing teams. And so though Stanford has a 2-time All-American setter and one of the best setters in the country, possibly a future Olympian, they made her look pretty okay. And they have great pin hitters, but every time that they went up for a big swing, Nebraska's touching it. And they're just affecting shots. So Rebecca Alec, Andy Jackson, Bergen Riley, Merritt Beeson, Harper Murray, those players on the front line just being able to deflect a shot. Because if you slow it down, you got to believe that there's a chance Lainey Choboy, Lexi Rodriguez, or Olivia Malk are going to get to the ball.
Even if they end up in the seats, which it looks like there was, I think, 3 times last night between those two, and Harper Murray, I think, almost ended up in John Cook's lap. He was pretty pumped up after that play. And
John oftentimes just watches a match. Of course he coaches, but, you know, within a play, he just sits and watches. And he's got his own next play mentality. There were a couple of instances last night And the Nebraska volleyball social media accounts posted a video this morning of John getting up out of his seat and giving a huge old fist pump. So for that to happen in September in a non-conference game, that's pretty cool. That's a great win. And that is a win that can really ignite the fan base. Not that it needs to be ignited, but it's a great moment. And you never know where this season is going to go. But I think there are some fans that are really starting to think now, okay, Louisville, Final Four. Let's really think seriously about getting these tickets.
It doesn't get any easier for them because Louisville, right back where they're headed. Again, they started the season there. They want to finish the season there. But they're going to be taking on Danny Busboom Kelly and the number 4 ranked Louisville Cardinal on Sunday. And that's a game nationally televised on ABC.
And that is John Cook versus former one of his old players. And Danny has had a remarkable career. And she's turned Louisville into a perennial power. And there is so much momentum behind volleyball in the state of Kentucky. And Danny and Craig Skinner, another former Nebraska assistant coach, they've really spearheaded that effort. That's going to be a big one. And Coach Cook was sharing with the media earlier this week that he got a text from Danny, I believe it was on either Tuesday or Wednesday, and she informed Coach Cook that they've sold so many tickets, they're opening the upper bowl at the KFC Yum Center for Sunday's match. They're expecting a crowd of more than 10,000 fans, plus it'll be on national network TV. It'll be ABC broadcasting the game at 11:30 a.m.
Nebraska going to have plenty of opportunities to showcase itself between that and pivoting over to football because you have nationally televised Fox broadcast, 7 o'clock kickoff tomorrow. Do you want to start with the 400th sellout, the first top 25 matchup in Lincoln for a decade, or the opening of conference play? You could go with any one of those avenues for a headline for this game against Illinois.
And you're leaving some big storylines on the table as well. It's a good matchup. It's two ranked teams, and this Illinois team is a lot better than people thought they would be. They're 3-0, and they have a marquee win. They beat 19th-ranked Kansas in Week 2. And if you look at Nebraska and Illinois, each has a win against an FCS opponent. Each has a win against a mid-major, so to say, and then each has a Power 4 win. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the statistics, and tonight we're going to do our Know Your Opponent segment, and I'm looking at Nebraska and Illinois side by side. Even Dylan Raiola and Luke Altmaier, they're the two quarterbacks in the game. Their numbers are very similar. Altmaier's completing, 69% of his passes? I mean, he is much improved. Last year, he threw 10 interceptions. So I didn't pick a storyline, Bill. I left all the peripheral stuff for the fans. Yeah. The 400 sellout, I get it. Big deal. Big Ten opener, yeah. Matt Rule calls non-conference preseason. It's very NFL of him. Mm-hmm. And then it's also a Friday night game. But I just like looking at the football because I think it will be a really good game.
I think Rule said it's almost like playing a mirror image of themselves, I think, on his Monday press conference. Because, it's a Brett Bielema team. They're going to run the ball. They're going to do the play action. They're going to have a salty defense.
Last week we talked about Northern Iowa's running back and how he's a big boy, right? Caleb Feakin of Illinois, 250 pounds.
It's a big man.
And he can move.
It's a large human.
Now, granted, he doesn't get the ball all the time. They kind of do a complementary back system. But, yeah, I think this is a game that's going to be a little bit black and blue, a little bit Big Ten. It's Nebraska, Illinois, and it could be a big game for Dante Dowdell for the Huskers. It might just be a feed Dante kind of game.
Yeah, it would. And I think Rule was asked, it might have been yesterday, if he'd like to see maybe one back get, 15, maybe 20 carries, something like that, because it's been very spread out, and he just kind of was like, we'll just kind of see how the game goes. We'll see what it looks like. But I think from the fan perspective, I think they'd like to see that. Now,
Nebraska has not trailed in the first 3 games of the season, and they've outscored opponents 102-20. So right now, I think the fan base has really been conditioned to the Huskers not really breaking much of a sweat. Mm-hmm. The only instance in which that was maybe at risk was early in Colorado, but Nebraska just came out, and that opening defensive series was so impressive. I think Husker Nation was all like, all right, game on,
Yeah.
But yeah. I this game, in my opinion, is going to have some tense moments. It could come down to the fourth quarter. Somebody may have the ball in a must-score situation with 3 minutes left to go. And I'm okay with, like, as a football fan, I'm okay with that. It'd be great to see some drama, especially on Friday night and inside Memorial Stadium. And the place, I would believe, is going to be pretty turned up. One of my greatest curiosities, Bill, as we pivot away from the football to all the other stuff that you just brought up, is what's it going to feel like at Memorial Stadium on a Friday?
How's the tailgating going to look? When are people, I mean, I think you even asked it yesterday. Are people just taking off work? You just work in the morning, taking the afternoon off, headed down? I know, and Nebraska Department of Transportation's already put out their alerts. There's going to be a lot of traffic downtown, evening, regular commute traffic, and all this.
Will you wake up Friday morning and it feel like Saturday morning? Because I think everybody has like their Saturday college football routine, right? Whatever that looks like. Some people instantly pack up the truck and they go set up the tailgate. Mm-hmm. Some just gather in the neighborhood and the kids are all throwing the football around. I like to walk my dog and just kind of enjoy a nice morning and then look at all the Husker flags in my neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But is it going to feel like Saturday on Friday? Because it is a Nebraska game day, if you're following what I'm saying. Yeah. And, as the day wears on, there's not college football to watch all day. So is it going to be just a Friday and then, at the end, there's football? Yeah. Or is it truly going to be like all the anticipation, all the lead up? I think we know that there are going to be a ton of people around Memorial Stadium all afternoon, and then it's really going to get pretty turned up late afternoon, early evening. And, of course, the restaurants are going to be full. The rail yard's going to have a lot of activity. But, like, for the duration of a day, and don't give me that, well, it's a night game. No. Like, last week was a night game. Mm-hmm. Did everybody wait to get all, like, mindful about football until 2 or 3 o'clock? No.
You wake up and it's game day.
Yeah, you turn on college game day. There's no college game day to watch. You could just stream all of 10, 11 stories from throughout the week and just get your fix that way.
You could do that. It'll be a weird day. But it'll be, and like I'm going to be working part of the day, but then I'm taking Jamie to the game. It'll be his first Husker game, and I'm coming back to work. It's going to be a weird day, but it'll be a good day.
It's Nebraska's first midweek home game since 2001, excluding Black Friday. So this is very rare, and Black Friday doesn't count just because it's essentially a holiday. It's right after Thanksgiving and.
It's a Thursday game against Rice, and it was moved because of the events of 9/11. I happened to be at that game as well.
Wow.
My dad took me to that game, so that was a good game to watch. So
that's an epic game in the course of, Nebraska football history, Memorial Stadium history, which I think segues directly into the 400th sellout. That's a milestone. Matt Rule and the players and the assistant coaches have all been so complimentary throughout this week about the fan base, its passion, and what did Ty Robinson say earlier this week? The atmosphere for these night games the last few weeks has been absurd. And he's been here 6 years. He's seen night games before.
Yeah.
But it has really elevated. And I think that goes to some of the way that the light show has been done. Everybody's sticking around to watch the light show now. The drones flying in the air. And then the product on the field. The football is really good, and this is a team that's 3-0 and nationally ranked.
Yeah. All the outside stuff is always really fun, but it's that much more fun when the football's good too. So it's 7.5 point spread. Over/unders at 42.5.
8.5, Bill.
8.5.
It grew overnight, at least according to what I was following.
Okay. So
this morning went to 8.5.
I think I saw it opened last Sunday at like 10.5, so it's gone down a little bit. So it's a little, but 2 scores, so like a 24-17 type of game, 27-24, somewhere in there. What's your one thing for the Huskers to win? What do you think?
I think they have to protect the football. I mean, that's a very cliche answer, but Illinois ranks in the top 5 nationally in takeaways and turnover margin. So if Nebraska gives the ball away a few times, you might lose the game. Mm-hmm. I mean, like 2 turnovers could cost you the game. And we've seen Dylan be, he hasn't been stressed too much. So as I talk about turnovers, I'm going to pivot it into Nebraska's freshman quarterback, who's been so good and so unflappable given, the home crowd and the national stage with the Colorado game and the varying defenses he's seen so far. But this is a little different because it's Friday, Fox, Big Ten play, a Brett Bielema coach team, which will hit you in the mouth. They're going to come at him. So how does Dylan operate? Most specifically, how does he do in terms of managing the football in critical moments? I think this game comes down to turnovers, and if Nebraska can win the turnover battle, I think that 7.5, 8.5, it'll stand up.
All right. And just real quick, Micah Mazuka will be available. He'll be dressed. Still not starting, but is available. And they get Jamari Butler back on the defensive line. He'll be fresh after not playing last week. So those are two notable kind of player notes there. Who's on the call this week? We talked about it last week. We weren't sure if it was going to be the main crew. Or
it's a guy who absolutely loves coming to Memorial Stadium on the Fox crew, Tim Brando. He has raved about Lincoln, Memorial Stadium, the Nebraska football program in general. And I know Tim even sent something on social media like 2 weeks ago expressing his excitement about coming back to Memorial Stadium. So Tim Brando on play-by-play for the Fox broadcast on Friday night. The analyst will be Devin Garner. I don't know if you remember that name, former Michigan quarterback.
Yeah, all right. So, okay. All right, so it's going to be a crazy next 48 hours. I think we have 5 high school football games tonight that you guys are going to be out covering. More local high school football tomorrow on top of Huskers stuff, on top of then on Sunday, Nebraska and Louisville. In Louisville, that makes it a little bit easier. But plenty to keep it tuned to on 10/11, digitally and on air for coverage over the next few days.
I'm glad you mentioned that high school thing. There are 0 high school football games this Friday in Lincoln. That's because they are trying to keep everybody safe, and some of those parking lots are even used for Nebraska parking and shuttles and transportation. And it's one of those no one wins here, right? There are some high school football purists that are very upset about this. This was not the University of Nebraska's decision. This was a Big Ten decision, and the Big Ten and its television partners. So we get a pretty exciting night of high school football tonight. We're going to have sports fourth quarter. It's not sports overtime, but we have 5 games in Lincoln to cover, and then we have 2 Lincoln teams in action outside of the capital city. Lincoln Pius X is at Platteview, and Parkview Christian hits the road, and they play a game at Shelton.
All right, so a ton of stuff to keep tuned to tonight on 10/11 on air and online, and again tomorrow for all the coverage starting. Kevin, I know you're super busy, so appreciate you just taking a few minutes out of your day to jump on another End Report episode. Appreciate everyone for tuning in and watching as always. 6 and 10 End Report, both tonight and tomorrow. You'll get all of the good stuff. So, Kevin, we'll do it all again tomorrow, all right?
Happy Thursday.
All right, have a good one, everyone.
You've been listening to the End Report Husker Show, sponsored by Fat Dog's Convenience Store. Watch, listen, and stream on the 1011 Now app, on YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. For more Husker coverage throughout the week, watch the End Report on 1011 Sports at 6 and 10 p.m. and download the 1011 Now app.